This episode of Ludonarrative Dissidents, Season 3 is brought to you by Sarah Cole. Thank you. Music is by Arcane Anthem. Check out his Patreon page on our show notes. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of Ludonarrative Dissidents. In this episode, we're going to be covering Heart, the City Beneath, a dark fantasy dungeon-crawling role-playing game where the dungeon has your heart's desire, as we'll discover. I want to thank everyone listening for supporting us for our Season 3 Kickstarter, as we did a very... Thank you again so much for all your generosity. And I'm, of course, joined here by my good friends and co-hosts, Greg Stolze and James Wallace. And yeah, it's I'm very excited for this season. And
Likewise.
Yeah, I will like to mention a brief bit of news. My architectural horror zine, The Night Clerk, is now available on DriveThruRPG and itch.io, and I'll have links in the show notes. So if you missed that backer kit campaign, if you like architectural horror, being trapped in an infinite hotel, usable for any modern horror role-playing game system, you can get it now on PDF. And I'm still working on a way to sell the print copies because I don't want to mail them from my house, so I'm trying to find a distributor. So
you don't have a P.O. box, huh?
Well, it's more I don't want to stuff all those envelopes myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fulfillment is a bitch.
Yep.
Yeah. I do often advise when people ask me about Kickstarter, how do I fulfill a Kickstarter? I've got, 150 things to fulfill. Do I talk to a fulfillment center? It's like, no, buy a box of padded envelopes and get stuffing.
Yep. That's what I did. BackerKit makes it really easy now because they have a thing with this company called Easy Postage where you get the addresses and it'll automatically calculate postage, and you can just buy it through there and print out labels and just, So it saves a lot of...
really seem to have their act together. They're doing a very good job.
Interesting.
It's still a little rough behind the scenes in some areas. It's still like the user help stuff is very bare bones. So you have to kind of figure stuff out on your own.
I just finished a Kickstarter and I'm like, I'm only going to do 60 of the things I have to mail out, where I am physically getting the paper cuts, but 60 seems like a reasonable number. I don't know. The temptation to switch to BackerKit is certainly there, but I'm like, would I lose my installed audience? Would I have to be on Kickstarter advertising my BackerKit stuff to my successful Kickstarters?
And I feel like that should be a topic for our live stream. Something I
was literally about to say.
One of our goals for this season was to do a monthly live stream, which we will save the audio and post them to the feeds. So you may have noticed that as well. And our next one is May 29th at 4 p.m. Central Time. We're going to you'll just have to tune in or listen in later to find out what the topic is.
I'm going to be shaking my fist at clouds, fulminating about how the youth these days don't understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I will probably say something about cricket.
There we go. I love it. I can't wait. So yeah, now that we got that out of the way, we can get into the topic at hand, which is Heart, the City Beneath, which was by far the winner of the poll. People really want us to talk about Heart, and
interesting,
and for good reason. It is a beautiful game. Grant Howitt is definitely a hot game designer in terms of what he's been able to produce in the last couple of years. He has even a newer game out called Eat the Reich, where you're playing vampires killing Nazis in World War II, and looks absolutely beautiful. And yeah, there's a lot. We should, I guess, dive into our questions. And the first question is, what does the game do? James, would you do since you're in the UK and you know Grant? What does Heart do? Yeah.
It's an interesting twist on dungeon delving, essentially. If this is your non-traditional dungeon delver. Heart, the City Beneath, exists below the city of Spire, which is an entirely separate role-playing game. This is very much a companion role-playing game to that one, though can be played as a standalone. And it's an amorphous dimension or something. There are various explanations within the rulebook for what it might be. But essentially, it starts off being an underground sort of kingdom, and as you descend further, things get weirder and much, much less pleasant, and generally more organic as well, and possibly sentient.
Has anybody sent a copy of this book to Guillermo del Toro?
I do not know, but he would definitely love it. The art is by Felix Mial, and it is absolutely breathtaking. It is some of the best art I've seen in an RPG in the last couple of years. Very evocative.
And all the art is by the one artist, so it gives an incredible coherent feel. There's a sense of it really being one vision.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the art, but I was not as blown away by it as you clearly are. Perhaps it's just a matter of taste.
I liked the art a great deal. It did not give me a clear impression of what Heart was or what it looked like. It is very strong on the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things about the game. It says on the back of the book that it's a story-focused or story-first game. And my first disagreement with it is, no, it's not. It's a character-first game. It's the focus of this game is very, very much on the characters. And secondarily, the locations. And I would say probably thirdly, the story. But it is a narrative game. It stresses improvisation. It stresses a lack of a preparedness in the GM. It is not expecting you to run pre-written adventures to the extent there is no adventure in the rulebook, not even as an example. There are almost no examples in the rulebook at all, which I will come back to, I think.
Oh, how do you feel about that, James? Do you feel good about that? Do you feel it was a brave, courageous, inspired choice, or
I'm going to say
droplets of rage blood emerging from the corners of your eyes? I know which way I'd bet.
Well, I'm going to say up front, I didn't play it. And the reason I didn't play it is because having read through the rules and the mechanics 3 times, I've yet to remember the mechanics. I do not feel confident to run the game because the mechanics have not settled in my brain. I could not get a feel for them as a structure. Little bits of them I can recall, but it uses a non-traditional gaming vocabulary, which is very evocative. The words they've chosen are great, but you have to remember a new set of words for pretty much everything. There are huge numbers of powers and things to remember. The interrelationships are slightly different. And there's no examples. So it's, one of the cardinal first rules you learn as a writer of fiction, any kind of fiction, is show, don't tell. Don't just say how something works. Use description, use examples. But we're not writing traditional fiction, we're writing games. And the cardinal rule in games is let the player experience it. It's experience, don't show, don't tell. And I used to hammer this into my game narrative students. And you can see it actually in the way that video games tutorials have evolved, because initially there were rule books with video games, separate printed rule books. Those went away quite quickly because that's a really bad way to teach someone to play a game. And then it became on-screen tutorials, often with little animated things showing, not telling. Still not good. And these days, almost every video game uses an interactive tutorial, and you learn the skills and you learn the abilities and the key presses and all the rest of it by doing it in the game. And there's none of that in Heart. It's very distant from its subject a lot of the time. It creates this evocative world with these interesting characters, and then there are these dry as bones rules, and I couldn't get a handle on it. I can't, ask me now. Couldn't tell you how the mechanics work. And yet it's not that untraditional. This is not because it's making a huge leap forward into new spaces of role-play design. It's really not. But I couldn't hold it in my head, which for me as a GM, if I'm going to do that, I need to feel that I know the rules. And there's a one-page crib sheet of the rules at the back, and I've read through that more times than I care to remember. Can't remember it.
Wow.
So that's why I've not played it. And apologies, I really should have done, but I simply did not feel able.
I didn't play it, but I did make a character because I felt really really drawn to the character archetypes. I thought they were very strong and interesting. And it's not just your basic, oh, you swing sword and big strong arms. It's, the beekeepers.
Mhm.
I'm like,
The
oh,
apiarist.
Yeah.
your body is a hive for biomechanical bees. And I'm like, tell me more.
Mm-hmm. The character classes are one of the strong points of this game. They're absolute unsurprisingly, I have run a campaign of this for 16 sessions on RPPR, so I'm well acquainted with mechanics and the
drink. Everybody, we've hit Ross's drink trigger, which is I've actually run a game of this.
And the thing that hooked my players were the character classes. Everyone found a character class that really resonated with them. They're incredibly evocative and with very interesting mechanics. And, one thing that everyone was really drawn to, for example, was like the characters, each class has their own unique abilities. And as you progress in the game, you get access to more powers, right? Better powers, more, and which is a very standard trope in role-playing games. But the most powerful abilities in Heart for almost all the character classes, for almost all of these, they're called zenith abilities. They almost always kill your character or in the character in some way. They are
transform them into something unplayable.
Yeah, it is the final punctuation of your character's story. This is how they go out.
Can I tell you my favorite one?
Please do.
All right. So one of the parts I really liked was the Vermissian Knights. And the idea is that you are like Knights of the Round Table if the Round Table was a cursed mass transit network. And you have these weird Magitech train bits fused to you. So for Vermissian Knights, you can pick the Zenith ability when you've completed your arc. It's Perpetual Motion Engine. You are, upon implantation of the heart seed into your suit's furnace, you become an unstoppable force within the city beneath. Indeed, you can never stop moving. You stamp off into the darkness, and your character is removed from the story except for the Deus Ex Machina ability that is granted to all surviving members of your party. And here's the text for that. This ability may only be used once per campaign by a single player character. When you are outside of a landmark or you or an ally suffers major or critical fallout, an inhuman collection of meat and twisted steel, the Vermissian Knight, arrives. They've been watching you this whole time. They immediately inflict 25 stress on an adversary of the GM's choosing, then disappear into the city beneath to protect other delvers. It's just, how great would that be? How fun would that be to have happen?
Yeah, it creates a memorable story for what your character ended, which is the perfect way for every let me tell you about my player character anecdote. Yeah, it was immediately, flies to honey. Like every player saw something. Like actually in the RPPR campaign, Aaron was the one who played the Vermissian Knight because Magitech, weird technology warrior with ideals. He loves that kind of archetype. One of my other players, Tom, he loves monstrous characters, and so he played the Butcher.
Wait, the Butcher or the Cleaver?
The Cleaver, sorry. Yeah, the Cleaver.
Can the Cleaver turn into a Butcher?
That can happen to any character. Sorry, yeah. There is a monster called the Butcher that you can become. If you fail, we'll go into the mechanics, but yeah, there's fallout, and that can end your character in any number of horrible ways. But
right.
Yeah, the Cleaver, that was it. Yeah, rereading this book, I mix some of my terms up, which goes to that. I'm like, come on, just their resistances, just call them hit points. Well, because the mechanic, so that's because they're trying to abstract it to cover all sorts of mechanical challenges, right? It doesn't matter if it's a cliff, a fire, or a monster. It's always you have to generate certain, you have to overcome it somehow, and we're going to abstract this with numbers and dice.
Right.
But yeah.
And there's 5 different ways you can be wounded with resistances. There's blood, which is that's hit points, but there's echo, which is the body, and mind, which is I love that word. And then there's mind, fortune, supplies. And we suddenly plunge back into the prosaic text rather than the madly evocative stuff. But yeah, it is a clever mechanic, but it is fundamentally hit points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they mean that like characters take stress to these pools, which I feel is a term they probably borrowed from Blades in the Dark, to sort of abstract characters. Instead of like in D&D and like hit points traditionally means, I mean, meat points, right? Like how much flesh has been chunked off your body through damage or through hazards,
right?
And this is more how close are you?
There's such a huge abstraction. High level characters in traditional D&D rules are like superheroes in movies where it's like, oh, I fell off a building and fell 20 stories and landed on a taxi cab, but because I have enough hit points, I can tank that shit.
Yeah. That, like literal superheroes. This is not, that's not what Heart is about. So yeah, it's a game. I think James makes an excellent point that like it's character, not plot. Because Heart is a game about like delving, going on this perilous journey to get what your heart desires, or what the heart thinks you desire or thinks that you need. And
it does not understand people very well.
And it's a very well-worn like archetype of adventure. Like another game that does this kind of style of story is Trophy Dark. And you can see it in everything from like Heart of Darkness to movies like Annihilation, of like characters journeying into a perilous place to get what they think they need or what they want, and they are transformed and ruined by it.
I see if they mentioned Roadside Picnic.
Yeah,
they don't, because Roadside Picnic was where I went for this. It's interesting.
Suggested media, Roadside Picnic by Arcady and Boris Dugatsby on page 210.
Okay, I went straight past it. I went straight to Stalker. Stalker was my first thing, and I love Stalker. I haven't seen it very recently. I have just literally a couple of months ago read Roadside Picnic finally, and it's very different to Stalker. And in many ways, it's much more character based. I think it's not about the zone itself. It's about the people around the zone, and actually the bits where you're in the zone are, for people who don't know it, zones, madly weird zones appear on Earth. It is speculated that aliens or some life form has visited the planet in some way and has left detritus behind. Detritus of unimaginable power and complexity. Their trash is our, unimaginably powerful fuel cell and that kind of thing. So stalkers go into the zone to recover this stuff.
The title Roadside Picnic refers to the central conceit that imagine you and your friends are driving along the highway and you park at a scenic overlook and have a little picnic, and you leave behind the wrappings of your sandwiches with smears of mayonnaise on them, and your bottle caps and your empty soda bottles and your crumbs of cheese. And after you drive away, the squirrels and the mice and the ants come out and lick at your leavings, and to them it is this amazing treasure, and to you it's just the trash of your roadside picnic.
Okay.
I recommend both the book and the movie, just without question. They are both very different masterpieces.
One of the other influences is Darkest Dungeon, which is a video game I played a lot of, and why I backed the Kickstarter for Heart, and why I'm listed as one of the Kickstarter backers in the back of the book. I just double checked.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, full disclosure. But Darkest Dungeon is about managing teams of people to send them into horrible places to die and lose their mind, and the art style is very evocative of Darkest Dungeon for me in Heart. So they're sort of a
I thought Darkest Dungeon was a chick tract.
No. Blackleaf, no.
That's Dark Dungeons, I think.
Yeah, I think that's Dark Dungeons, yeah.
You can't be surprised that I made that error. You're not allowed.
Yeah, it's Dark Dungeons for Jack Chick and Darkest Dungeon for the fantasy video game.
But you mentioned Annihilation, Ross, and that's credited in the back, though I'm not sure if I can't remember if it's the Vandermeer book or the Alex Garland movie. Again, both of which are excellent.
It says both. And the soundtrack. I'm
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at that
Ooh,
page.
who did the soundtrack?
I don't know.
I forgot
But
the soundtrack.
they
But yeah.
recommend Gyo, The Enigma of Amagara Fault, and Uzumaki by Junji Ito.
Mhm.
And I like Uzumaki so much better than Gyo.
Mm-hmm.
But okay.
But anyways, all thematically, it's all about like characters going on an expedition into a dangerous, unnatural wilderness or wasteland.
Yes, from which they may well not return.
Yeah, but they seek to become transformed or to
And which will corrupt and pervert you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, my take on it was dungeon crawl, but gross, goth, and emo.
Mm-hmm. Also, Bloodborne. Yeah, very. It's a very fleshy game. It's a very organic game.
Yeah, they use the term body horror, I think, quite early on, almost as a warning. And it's interesting because for me, yeah, there was some of that stuff, but it was kind of, again, it felt like it was at a remove. It was kind of the ick of body horror without actually the psychological stuff going on of this could be you.
Well, there are thematic elements, like the Butcher mentioned earlier is an entity that I believe there are several entities that if you're wounded or you fall into certain patterns of behavior, you gradually become a beast. Your flesh is reborn into it. So there's like the Labyrinth curse where people literally become mindless. Oh no, for Butcher though, page 180, Fallout Taken.
So they cram you in the wall, and it's like, well, I ate this chunk of wall, so now there's a hole in the wall, so I'm gonna patch that with you. It's like drywall.
Oh, here we
It's
go.
not nearly dry.
Yeah, the Butcher is they were once desperate people who, despite the warning songs of folk places, ate the forbidden flesh that grows in secret places. And then so they ate the walls of the heart dungeon and became monsters. Yeah, don't eat the wall flesh, in other words. So that's the kind
Well,
of
can a cleaver become a butcher?
anyone can become a butcher if they eat the forbidden flesh. Cleavers are hunters. The hunter becomes more monstrous than the things he's hunting. That's sort of the archetype.
I'm just wondering if that's a zenith for them.
Oh, maybe.
Let's go see.
But overall, like it's a game where you first figure out not only do you pick a class, you also pick a calling, and the callings are more. We also pick a ancestry. An ancestry can be because again, as James mentioned, this is from the same setting, the Spire. So you could be one of the oppressed dark elves, a drow, or you could be a human. You can be a high elf in this game, or a gnoll. And then the adventure is like, why are you down here? And they are adventure, enlightenment, forced, or heart song, or penitent, and basically your motivation. Why are you down in this terrible place? And that sort of informs the GM about like what kind of story elements does the player want to show up in the game.
Here's where I'm going to disagree with James that this is mostly about character and not about plot. The book is mostly about character and not about plot, but my guess would be that once it hits the table, it becomes very much about plot because of, this is my answer to how does it do what it does. It links in D&D. How do you level up? You get XP for slaying monsters and for gathering gold in some editions. In the early editions, you got 1 XP for every gold piece you hoarded up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because powering up and getting cool new abilities and hitting 5th level and learning Cloud Kill was so rewarding, people pursued the only avenue that was open to them for those improvements, which was killing monsters and getting stuff. Kill monsters and take their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's the play loop. Here, to advance, you have to complete a plot beat, and the plot beats are all broken down by your motivation. So the mechanics exist at the place where character meets plot, where plot is expressing character, and therefore, by linking it to advancement, every character is motivated, every player is motivated to express character through plot. And let me find an example from... I made up an example character because, that's a thing I do. And I went with... When I first read through it, I'm like, oh man, Heart Song Cleaver. That would be the cool pairing, because it's like, oh, yes, something in the heart is calling to me to become a different self. And Cleaver is all about, you've been changed by the heart and it's mutating you. And I'm like, these just go together like chocolate and peanut butter. But once I started actually making a character, I went with Enlightenment because, probably in part, it looks like the sample character is standing in front of a conspiracy board like I use for Unknown Armies. And so you have to pick the impossible thing you're trying to achieve in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of each session, you're like, okay, here are the beats that I want to pursue. And when you complete one of these plot beats, you get a power up. It's like, it's like a Scooby snack for gamers. It's like, oh, so, minor beats for this conspiratorial nerd intellectual class are allude to events that led you to seek forbidden knowledge to achieve an impossible task, gain favor with a faction that can help you learn more about your goal, take minor mind fallout. So basically expose yourself to sand checks like in Call of Cthulhu until you crack. Acquire an NPC bond who has access to useful information, flee from a combat or a similarly dangerous situation, or hide until it all blows over. I wouldn't pick that one if I'm going Cleaver. Dissect something or interrogate someone that can shed light on your task. So after you've gathered up some lesser powers by completing minor beats, you can go on to major beats.
Mm-hmm.
Take major mind fallout, which is a lot rougher than the minor fallouts. Kill someone who is trying to stop you from claiming knowledge. Destroy a haunt to learn more about your task. And haunts are the places you go to fix your various types of hit points. So it's like, to learn more about my task, I'm gonna burn down the bar where I tell everyone about my problems. Attract a protege who's read your work and is determined to learn more. And then the Zenith beats, these are the ones that unlock here is your cool blaze of glory. You become ungovernable, unstoppable, unplayable. And the Zenith beats for this are find the final secret you have so desperately sought and use it to solve your impossible task, or find the final secret you have so desperately sought and destroy it so no one else can know. And so, by tying all this together in a tidy package, the way to get stronger is to have plot development. And the more your plot develops towards its ultimately tragic or gross apotheosis, the more powerful you become. And to achieve the apex of power, you must finish your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that very neat. And I like that it has a baked-in end game.
Mm-hmm.
And they say in the book, they're like, yeah, we kind of aimed this for like 8 sessions, an 8-session campaign, and you're not going to play this for 5 years, my man. And I'm like, good. Yeah, I get it. I don't know that I want to play a game for 5 years so much.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more 5 years feels like a significant portion of my remaining span.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Though I could see people, playing through a campaign and then starting another campaign, perhaps set slightly in the future, with new characters encountering the marks left on Heart by their previous characters. And, people have done this
100%.
with other campaigns and with other campaign settings. But it strikes me that Heart would be ideally set up for that. Because the death or demise or disappearance of your first set of player characters is built into the rule structure and the whole structure of the game.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of Zenith abilities that are like make an impact on the setting. Like this landmark, you create a landmark, you destroy a landmark, you create a safe haven for people. You do, like there are wide ranging ramifications for the setting.
Let me see if you can become Batman. Who are the cursed volunteer cops?
The Hounds.
Yeah, the Hounds.
Yeah, they're
let's see what their zeniths
you could turn an area into a World War I battlefield essentially. There's a lot of things you can do. And they have a supplements for it. I did run my campaign for 16 sessions, and I felt like I was just having fun with it. So Heart is a game. I think I see James's point though about like character versus plot, but like a plot driven game would be something like Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu, where there's a written plot. It's a very an investigation, a mystery to be solved, and there's objective answers about whether this thing is going to be resolved or not. Heart is a character study where everything is a reflection of the characters themselves. The things they face are mirrors or inversions of themselves in some way, or something about their past. And so there's a difference there. But this is not a game even if you had either of you run it like for 1 or 2 sessions, you're not really getting the full effect until you can have enough time to have a character arc. But it is a game that is very much meant to be like 8 sessions, like, and the farther away you go from either that on either too short or too long, you're kind of like changing. Like I had to change house rules or like give players more resources so that they could recover at least somewhat from Fallout. I was probably a little too nice when I was running it. I feel like
the bane of every horror campaign.
Yeah, what ironically, I realized after I run the Delta Green Impossible Landscapes campaign, I really need certain players who are really interested in like there are players who like the escapist, the power fantasy, right? Like my little dude is doing great and I feel good because of that. Then there are the players who like my little dude is suffering horribly and I love it. I want to see my little dude suffer terribly and get dragged through the mud and broke.
Yes. Yeah. I've seen this in our Unknown Armies game. I think I need a stability roll here, don't you, GM?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you think this would disturb my character a lot? Well, okay.
Heart is very much made for that second type of player. It's not made for the escapist power fantasy, even though your characters can be very powerful and fucking change the world in a meaningful way.
Sand check me, daddy.
Yeah, or like let me get hit with a labyrinth curse, or let me get inflicted by the ravening and turn into a mindless monster and rip my skin off and go traipsing into the meat forest of the night.
Traipsing into the meat forest is definitely an album title.
But yeah, I do love this game. But let's talk a little bit about the core mechanics, since we sort of briefly mentioned.
What I basically said was I can't remember them.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I've got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've played it, of course, Ross being Ross. So let me see if I've got it right. When you try to do something tough, you roll a D10. And if you've got one of, what are there?
There's
10 skills?
Yeah, a skill.
Yeah. If you've got the right skill, add another D10. If you've got the right domain, which means that trying to kill someone in a back alley is different than trying to kill them in a forest, is different than trying to kill them in a temple. And that, if you're good at temples, you will be good at just about anything that happens in a temple.
Yeah, and domains aren't just geography too. Some of them are things like cursed.
It's vibes.
Yeah. So I really like domains as an idea. Like not just like things that but like, this familiarity with.
I am good at warrens, so anytime we are in a tight, close, dark, miserable, moist space, I will be better. I will be functioning better than someone who likes to stand up straight. So if I have a skill, if I have a domain, and if I have mastery, which is like I got one of these twice.
Yeah, like a lot of the abilities, higher level abilities, grant mastery, or certain like high end pieces of equipment, grant mastery.
Right. And I roll up to 4 dice for my cool shit. For how appropriately optimized to this event I am. And then if it's ordinary, I take my highest die. If it's kind of tough, I knock out my highest die and use my second highest. If it's a real bitch kitty, I knock out my 2 highest dice and take my third one. And if all my dice get knocked out and I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants, I roll 1d10, and if it's a 10, I'm not screwed. And if it's anything else, I'm screwed.
Well, to a degree. Basically, 1 through 5 is a failure. 1 is a critical failure. 6 through 7 is success at a cost. 8 through 9 is success. And 10 is a critical success. Basically, if you roll a 7 or less, you take stress to one of your 5 stress pools. And 8 through 9, you don't take any stress. And
well, hold on.
Yeah. Page 8.
That's but there's an exception if your pool gets down to 0, you still roll 1 die, and it's kind of your desperation Hail Mary roll. I remember that pretty.
If your dice pool is
I did remember that one. Yeah.
If the dice pool is reduced to 0 or fewer, roll 1d10. Succeed with a cost on 10. Otherwise, fail.
Yeah. And then stress matters because eventually you'll have to make a fallout check.
Yes.
And fallout checks are basically, instead of like having hit points, you take like specific kind of injuries or
yes, it's straight out of Apocalypse World or Dogs in the Vineyard. It's, when you rack up enough bad stuff, it rolls over into specific plot, in D&D, again, to compare this to the original Dungeon Crawl, it's like, you might pick up, a specific enemy might have a spell that turns your left hand into a lobster claw, but then that's just handled narratively. But mainly it's, if you have a positive number of hit points, you're good. If you have a negative number of hit points, you're dead. If you have 0 hit points, you're gasping out your speech about, I always loved you, Viridian, and hoping that someone comes around with the Cure Light Wounds so that you can get the plot development of admitting you always loved Viridian, which is not mechanized. But in this game, there's probably someone where a plot beat is admit your love to your crush. And so instead, the fallouts are very specific.
And a lot
of find those. You probably know these, right?
Yeah, they range from minor to critical, and a lot of the critical ones are like you make a new character. Go. Like my favorite one is Echo, critical, and like on page 88, the Ravening. Your body hatches with a red, wet noise, and a ravening beast emerges from you. Skinless and steaming with heat, hungry for food. You die. This is how they breed. And also, if your friends are nearby, they have to deal with the ravening beast. And there's some art to depict that in the book.
That art, it's like a turducken of werewolves.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's like there's the guy and he's screaming, and there's the 4-eyed werewolf coming out of his mouth, but it's screaming. And there's like, what would that be? Like Wolverine mouth inside there with maybe weasel mouth inside that. There's a lot of nested mouths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, because of the way the dice rolls, it is a pretty swingy game in this regard. Your characters can get...
Yeah, there's no bell curves here.
Yeah. Especially with
bell curves are for suckers.
Characters can get taken out or incapacitated fairly quickly. So I remember a lot of the campaign was like, we need to deal with all this fallout from that last scene. So the healing rules are a bit stingy too, which for me, like I do remember one of the criticisms I had of this game was that characters can get banged up and that's fine, but like then the recovery process is very long and grueling and kind of slow. Your characters aren't like they don't go out and, if they just get major fall, a broken, arm or leg or whatever. Some of these fallouts mean like, well, we just have to stop and recover this. Otherwise your character can't go forward. And your character's not so bad that you just need to make a new character. So it kind of slows it. And also I had to choose the fallout all the time, which was definitely like, what do I want to inflict on players?
Sometimes that can be fun, though.
Sometimes that can be fun, but like, especially when later on in the campaign where players are getting a lot of fallout because they were dealing with a lot of situations, it slowed down the game as I was flipping through pages, figuring out what to hand out to players.
It did occur to me it felt like that was going to be a lot of work. And Grant Howitt is one of the masters of the percentile dice table. One of my great regrets is he did an amazing table for the edition of Paranoia I did with him. If you get outside, what do you find there? And there were like 100 entries in it, and every single one of them was funny in wildly different ways.
Wow.
And why aren't these percentile charms? Or why aren't they, just roll for one? Having to pick one puts a lot of work on the GM.
Yeah.
But what you were saying, Ross, everything in the book needs to be looked up.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a fly-by-your-pants game, much as it would like to encourage improvisation and a lack of preparedness. Everything, even GM rules, player abilities, equipment. All of them need to be looked up a lot because they're very specific and they are very mechanical and they are tied to specific things. If you've only got one copy of the book, you are going to be passing it around an awful lot and flipping through it an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Rowan, Rook, and Deckard are cynical enough to have done this to encourage every member of the playing group to buy their own copy. But I'm pretty sure it won't have hurt sales.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's kind of in this odd space where, it has these storytelling elements, but it still has like more trad RPG elements, like the weapon tag system. Or equipment tag system. It gets very, it is surprisingly crunchy for this kind of like storytelling theme that they're going for. I feel like, second edition where they kind of streamline this stuff would be helpful. Or like, the idea I think would be really neat is if the Fallout system was player driven in the sense that like you have to take, like the GM says, you have to take Fallout. And then the player gets to choose because then the GM doesn't have to worry about that. And then the player has to literally pick their poison in some cases.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. This is something that I've done in a couple systems where I have something like Fallout and in the as yet unpublished Dying Breath, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, how badly screwed up are you? I mean, you're badly screwed up that you're taking a consequence, but if you got hit just normal hard, the player chooses the fallout. Mm-hmm. If you got hit harder than that, I think the GM chooses it. And if it's the worst possible, it's like, no, just roll randomly and it can't be anything that's happened to you before.
Yeah, some kind of conversation.
That's the one option you've left out. Yeah. The one thing you've not considered there is have one of the other players choose.
Oh,
man, I'm not that cruel.
I mean, it's a horror game. Yeah.
In a game that, there's all these fascinating characters, and there is actually a lack of interplayer stuff. There's quite a lot, or into PC stuff. Mm-hmm. There's quite a lot in your setup. You get asked questions as part of your character.
And there are ways to help each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Or just bind your backstories together. But within an awful lot of the mechanical effects, there is nothing specifically about involving other player characters. And I think a game like this, it would give it not necessarily an entire new dimension, but possibly a micro dimension. Mm-hmm. For those of us who have read up on this stuff, the macro and micro dimensions. I get somebody who this is a complete side note. I wrote these Sonic the Hedgehog books back in the early mid-90s, one of which is about time travel and parallel worlds. I still get a guy writing to me asking me to explain the underlying physics of time travel and parallel worlds and the multidimensional world theory in the Sonic the Hedgehog universe, and he will not shut up and go away.
Just send him to Time Cube and say, this explains everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to encourage him. It was amusing for a while. It has ceased to be amusing. having other players involved in narrative decisions that affect your character, I think, could be really interesting.
Yep.
That is the direction I'd go with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a relatively minor complaint. Like, it slowed things down, the Fallout system.
See, to
but
me,
like,
I'm like, oh, it would just be too tempting for the one griefer in your group to. It's like, oh, you choose what happens to him, and it's like death. That's one of the options, right? Death. He dead now.
well, I mean that the way the Fallout system works is that it's not possible because there are tiers of Fallout, unless it's like all the critical ones are basically death anyway, or near death. So like it yeah, if you're a critical Fallout, it doesn't really matter. It's just how does your character die horribly. Or do they starve to death, or are they dragged away in the dark by monsters? You know, the real thing is this game doesn't work unless everyone is on board with the same vibe and like wants to really focus and tell a really cool story.
So one griefer could derail this.
Oh yeah, 100%. This is a game that requires a lot of work by everyone at the table. Not, I mean, like it's not like D&D where some people can just sit back and roll dice. Like you have to carry your part of the story, because I mean, like as James explained, the whole, or both of you explained, the story beat system requires you to fill narrative plot points in order to advance your character. So you can't just, kill monsters to get XP.
To address the question of how it does what it does. We got through my comments of how I really like the advance to the connection of character advancement to plot beats, and how when you pick, it's not your character class, it's your character motivation. You are setting up a series of potential futures. These are the various ways my story can end, even successfully. It can always end with, oh, you wandered off into the dark and you got ate by a grue. But, if you get your heart's desire, here are the ways that your heart's desire could manifest. And it's very different if you're a guy who's just putting in his hours because he's being compelled because, they have his daughter hostage, versus a guy who's like, yes, I'm going into the heart because it whispers to me about the beautiful changes it will work upon me, body and soul. So the observation I had, and I remember from, and this is especially, I don't know how much this has changed in 5th edition or later editions of D&D, but that especially the sort of 2nd edition stuff I remember playing, to me, my Dungeons and Dragons, there were a lot of things that had that were kind of blandly described, but had fairly intricate mechanics, right? Like hit points are very blandly described, but they're central to the system. Here in Heart, it's sort of flipped that. You have a lot of simple mechanics. I mean, the way your lamp works is the same way your rope works, is the same way that your hand axe works in combat, is the same way that your pile of pearls works in trading. The mechanics are, but then on top of that, you will have a lot of fancy description in the treasure and equipment that makes it, oh yeah, this particular thing that is mechanically equivalent to any other piece of, what are they called? Resources. This is mechanically equivalent to any resource that's a D8 resource with no tags. That could be some pearls. It could be the pelt of a weird animal. It could be whatever. But it's described, and the way you got it is folded into it, and the way you write it down on your character sheet is specific to events. It's not, you're never just going to find 10 gold pieces in Heart and it's 10 gold pieces.
Yeah, no.
And I think that compared with the loads and loads of evocatively described stuff that's in the book, that is going to lead at anyone who digs vibes, who digs vibes-based role-playing, is going to have a ton of material to work with from this, and a ton of options to say, oh, well, what I found, I found a gold ring in this guy's gullet along with fingers. So yeah, I feel a lot better about killing him knowing that he was a cannibal. and now when I sell that ring, it's gonna recall me to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is vibes-based role-playing an actual subgenre? Is this a thing?
I feel, yeah, I mean, definitely, especially now, like,
I mean, perhaps not the heart vibe, but I think there are a bunch of other games that are about the feels.
Sure.
They're about the atmosphere and the tone.
Mhm.
And in fact, we were talking about maybe doing a couple of them for this season, like some of the Japanese, the much calmer, yes,
Wander
or Wander Home,
yeah,
games like that.
So this was one of my moments of lit crit where I'm like, wow, that degree really paid for itself. And it was realizing that Thomas Ligotti's primary thing is tone. And he creates this bleak, despairing, chaotic, ironic, detached tone. And that's the best thing he does. And I don't know if he's consciously aware of this or it just works out that way, but he is I think, a very disciplined writer in that he does not give you a lot of character or plot or setting. Everything is the minimum amount of plot, setting, an event and character required for tone. It's like a bird that has hollowed out bones so that it is light enough to fly. And so Thomas Ligotti, in my belief, is that he ruthlessly eliminates anything that is not slavishly devoted to supporting his tone. There is no extra in his work. And so, yeah, that's what I can see you doing with vibes-based play is that, is it the handmaiden of the vibe? Then if not, be gone. There's no room for anything else. And
of course, in game design, that's talking about you'd be stripping down your mechanics to ruthlessly serve this one particular end.
Right. And not every player and every play group is going to be disciplined enough. But maybe that's okay. That for a Thomas Ligotti published short story, it is okay to have this absolute laser-like focus on a tone of annihilating despair. But when it's, you and three buddies around a table with some beers and pretzels and
for 3 hours,
you'll get some annihilating despair, but you'll also get some comic relief.
Yeah. So do you think Hart gets that Thomas Ligotti level of focus?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No game has or could.
Oh, okay.
I mean, even Delta Green, which wants to be bleak as hell with every cell in its blistered, burned out soul, still has moments where you're like, wait a minute, I feel uplifted. Wait a minute, this part's funny. I mean, when you have 4 people who are ordinary people playing Delta Green, it's not going to be as dark and grim and remorselessly bleak as it would be if you got like Caleb, John, Dennis, and I don't know. Glancy seems like he might have trouble not being jolly, at least for a minute, just like a foil.
Yeah. Like
there will be one funny part so that the gross, disgusting, horrifying part hits harder.
Yeah. And in fact, Hart has a section that says essentially exactly that. There's a page 111, tension and breaking it, in the GM advice. And there's a big chapter on GM advice. Not all of which I agree with. I think it lacks some fundamentals. I think saying, just wing it is fine for experienced GMs, but you need more support than that. But they actually say people are going to make jokes and puncture the tension of the body horror dungeon crawl. They're going to make jokes for a variety of reasons, such as nervousness. I'm zipping through these. To release the pressure that builds up from tense horror sections, or because there's often something so over-the-top grim that it's actually pretty funny. None of these are inherently bad. And essentially they're talking about beats, story beats in terms of peaks and troughs. If you're laying out a beat sheet, it is often good. Shakespeare does it. The one I talk about way too much is the porter in Macbeth. We've just had the incredibly tense, long, drawn-out murder of King Duncan by Macbeth, egged on by his avaricious is the wrong word, his wife, incredibly tense. And
ambitious.
Then something like that. Anyway, and then there's a banging at the door, and the porter, who is drunk, goes to open the door, has a pee along the way, and has a comic monologue about being drunk. And it's actually very funny. And it completely, suddenly you're back in the real world, or you've been grounded, and it works incredibly well. And humor, just people letting off a little bit of steam, making a stupid joke, can really do that. And it's important because then you get to maintaining that pitch, that Ligotti-like pitch constantly is incredibly hard. As you say, with a group of players.
I mean, there's a reason most of Ligotti's stuff is short.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. I mean, I think that's part of his discipline.
Yeah, and you can't really have like really great in-depth character arcs in short. It's a lot harder to do so, right? To have those satisfying character arcs in shorter periods of time. That's why I think honestly one of the Hart's inspirations is sort of the prestige television season, right? Like it's 8 episodes, like enough to establish who the characters are and to show them change over time as they experience events, as they go through things, and then show how they wind up at the end.
Yeah, that was explicitly one of my inspirations, one of my structural templates for Las Vegas, which plays in 4 sessions and is scripted very tightly to 4 sessions. And I think it's a really good model. This old model that we're talking about, Greg, of the D&D campaign just being open-ended with the idea that your characters will just go on and on and on until they get shanked by a goblin in a dark alley sometime and die this ignominious death that means nothing.
Yeah.
To actually know that your character has an endpoint is really interesting. You don't know which of the 3 endpoints it's going to be, but knowing your character is finite going into the experience,
yes,
there aren't many role-playing games that do that. And I think Paranoia is one of the few others where you know your character's going to die, and that's because everybody dies, usually very quickly and in particularly stupid ways. Paranoia is kind of almost the flip of this, because it is very rare for your death in Paranoia to actually mean anything.
Yeah.
Whereas
speaking of vibes based, Paranoia is like everything is pointless, chaotic, and funny. Where here it's everything is pointless, chaotic, and tragic.
And sometimes
things are that's facile. Everything here is meaningful.
Yes, everything's about
and
you.
Tragic.
It's all about you.
You are the It's what you've always suspected. You are the most interesting and important person in the world.
Yep. That's sort of the point.
But it's interesting. Sometimes in Paranoia, the bleakness can seep through, and there'll be a moment where you just go, "Oh man, actually, that's really bad." And this is, I do think it's not exactly a mirror image, but I would like to hope that when I invited Grant to come in with me and design the Paranoia reboot, which Mongoose has now memory hold, that it may have informed later some of his design decisions in this, just to do something that's very, very opposed to it.
All right. Do you think that counts as, the drinking game trigger for James, which is name check or name drop?
I can come up with much better name drops than that. Not to do Grant down, but I've talked about Grant before. He is an extraordinary designer, but I think this does show some of the traits that his other games, even his one-page games, show, which is that he puts a trust in the GM that I'm not sure all GMs are necessarily up to, because not all GMs are Grant. There's a lack of structure to his games. In a lot of games, the structure arises directly from the rules. The rules are the structure of the game. D&D is that very much, and the structure and the setting as well. The structure of a dungeon, because a mapped out dungeon, you're following preset directions. There are only certain ways you can go and only certain things you can do. There are a lot of rules in here which dictate some of the structure, but they don't dictate, I think, the grander narrative structure. Yes, certainly, but not so much the beat by beat. I'm talking about traditional story beats rather than Hart's own definition of beats. The minute by minute way the role play goes. And this is again why I think the lack of examples in the book are, there are two very short examples of play, and they are both completely rules based. There's nothing about how people are role playing through this, what their characters are doing, what their characters are saying. It is about the dice they are rolling. And I think players and GMs like to have that crutch. They do say right at the start, there's a bit where Grant and Chris, his co-designer, say that they have two different versions of Heart when they're running it, and they're very different tonally and structurally in play. And there is no one true version of Heart, and there is no way of playing it right. Your version, whatever it's going to be, is the correct way. But at the same time, there is a need to go, this is how this stuff works. This is how an adventure would work. There is an adventure that you can download for free as part of the Quick Start rules. They say Quick Start, it's like 50 pages. And it doesn't feel to me like an adventure. It feels like a description of an adventure. It's
Ouch.
like it's lacking in detail. There's very, very little hand-holding here. And Heart is not a world in which you imagine anyone really holds anyone's hand. But occasionally I would like a games design, the games designer to reach down and just go, this is how you would navigate this bit as a player. Like I say, it's all telling. There's very little showing. And I see that in a lot of Grant stuff. Honey Heist is a work of genius, but people put it in front of first-time GMs and go, whoa, this is a role-playing game, go for it. It's of Honey Heist, for those who don't know it, you're all bears. You're stealing honey from something, quite often a bank. And it's mad and surreal, but it's one page of rules, and it's all rules and no structure. And for somebody who's never GM'd before, yes, they might try it, but it is like jumping off a high board to have to do that. Grant, Greg, you were about to say something. Sorry, I called you Grant for a moment there.
Couple things. First off, I cannot remember what sitcom this was, but I remember this scene very distinctly, which was, remember what swim lessons with Dad were like? And the dad in the flashback was played by Stacy Keach, right? the just most disapproving dad macho actor you can imagine. And you just see him pick up this like 8-year-old and huck him into the water yelling, "Don't be a pussy."
It sounds like Arrested Development, but I'm not sure.
Maybe,
yeah.
But I think it was older than that. But just the idea of, you huck him in the deep end. And yeah, some people,
Titus, I think
all of us designers can't see what we can't see and tend to assume that we are designing for people just like us. And if you don't really think about, okay, I am probably designing for people who are actually very different from me, because the people who buy my games are by definition not the people who are designing their own games. And so, yeah, there can be a lot of stuff, I'm sure, that for the GM feels like being thrown into the deep end. And for the writers, just like, well, everyone understands how you do this, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't need anyone to teach me how to be a good GM. We've discussed this before. And so, yes, there is certainly a place for, okay, here's how you do the basic stuff. Here's how you just, you're going to be patient zero. Even if you've never played, you're going to GM for your cousins. Go. I'm thinking of T-ball versus Major League Baseball, right? T-ball, you put the ball on a tee and your toddler goes up to it and tries to hit it with a bat because there's no way in hell they can hit a moving object. And then as they get a little older, it's like, okay, we're moving you to slow pitch softball. You're going to have this pumpkin ball that's, huge and soft and easier to hit. And we're going to throw it to you underhand. And then a little older, it's like, okay, now you're up to baseball, we're going to throw this smaller, harder ball overhand, so it's going to go much faster. And then you just keep going up through the stages until you're a batter who can hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball. And I'm not saying the fact that some people need a tee means that there should not be any Major League Baseball games. But it is certainly very helpful, I think, to know what level you're getting, and that people who can hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball have to understand that some people need a pumpkin ball, and people who can only hit a pumpkin ball should understand that some people out there can hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, and there is no recognized system for describing how difficult or how complex a role-playing game is, either mechanically or in terms of the concepts.
Because there are so many axes of complexity, and they're all vague.
Yeah.
I mean, with sports, it's like either you hit the ball or you don't. But with a role-playing game, it's like, can you measure for me how much emotional bleed interfered with your ability to manipulate the mechanics at the table in a timely manner? Nobody can analyze that.
Board Game Geek has what it calls weight, and it's entirely subjective. And, people go, oh, yes, I own this game. I reckon it's weight 3.5, based on what other games' weights are, kind of. Yes, it's entirely subjective. There is no way of doing this, but it's slightly kind of, I would say Heart, despite having a section for first-time GMs, is aimed above that. I suspect Rowan, Rook and Deckard know exactly who their market is at the moment, but at the same time, I think they're a company on the cusp of breaking out of the niche of the people who have supported them to get to the size that they are. And they are about to, if they have not already, broken into a much wider mainstream audience. And they're getting people picking up these games as their first RPGs or moving from D&D to R&D stuff. They have pretty much, they're in a perfect position to become a fairly major force within the industry, I would say. Their stuff is distinctive, it's original, it looks great. People really, they've got evangelists out there singing their praises. They're really well set. When you get to that level, you can't just cater for your existing audience. You have to, and I think they're trying to, in this, make some concessions for this might be your first role-playing game. I don't think Heart does a good job of it. But the trouble is here, and this is something I should have said at the start, I'm talking about the book. I'm not talking about the game.
Right.
And a lot of my critiques of Heart are about the book and the way it's organized and the way it's presented, which in many ways are beautiful. And Maz, who does the production end of stuff, I don't know who actually physically designed the layout for this, but it's great. It's really tight. Technically, I have a couple of tiny quibbles. It's a little bit concentrated. Some of the gutters in some places are a little bit tight and the margins are tight and it feels slightly claustrophobic because it should, because that's what art is.
Right.
You should feel the pressure of the walls squeezing in on you.
Closing in around you.
And I think the font choice as well, I was initially a bit down on it. Yeah, it works. It's really good.
How do you feel about how are the columns?
They're great. They're great. They are balanced where they need to be and not balanced where they're not. It's great. It's a really nice, it's designed by somebody who understands print layout.
Though I'll tell you one thing I noticed about it.
Does it use the future conditional?
If you put in, if you've got the PDF and you search for the word will, 341 uses in 226 pages. That's like a whole.
Yeah, but how many of those are names of Kickstarter backers?
Not zero.
Not enough. Not nearly enough.
Oh.
So, I mean, there's my, I have to say it. People won't learn if I'm not constantly harping about this.
Well, we'll just have to wait for the next generation of games to come out. Like once the Ludonarrative has reached the mainstream of game design, then
that's it. Once it's everyone has listened to us,
it has to.
There's a lot of wills in here. Yeah. I'm going through the Kickstarter backers.
Yeah, there are a lot of wills.
There's several lines of wills.
So, I agree about there are multiple axes of complexity in games. I think that's a good point because 5th Ed D&D has more complex rules than Heart, but yet a lot of players prefer that because in some ways, because of the complexity, everything that you can do in D&D is listed on your character sheet, all the verbs, all the skills, all the spells or feats and attacks and that kind of thing. And the complexity in Heart is in that improvising and creativity of like spontaneously and collaboratively telling a story of these characters' descent into this cursed land and their transformation or their ruination as they find what they want in the heart. That's the kind of active thinking, active playing that a lot of players don't. They want to hang out with their friends, drink beer, and have and eat pretzels and whatever, and roll dice. They don't want to like, well, what's a good arc for my Vermisian knight at this point in the story? Like, should they be helping their friends or sacrificing their friends as what price glory, or should they be? Yeah, like that. That's a lot, and not everybody can do that very well.
I feel like you could just go through and it's like, at the end of every session, I'll pick the 2 things that seem like I might want to do them next session.
Yeah.
And not do a lot of forethought with your beats. And James, you're right.
I mean, I do love the story beat system. It's so good. It is such a good system. I don't think I've mentioned how much I like the story beat system for characters and tying that to advancement. Also, a lot of our critiques of this game, I feel, are going to be resolved in the there's a campaign that is currently in the works written I forgot the name, but Gareth Hanrahan is writing it, and they did a Kickstarter for it,
and it looks great. I'm really interested to read this because I think
I'll probably run that campaign for PPR so at some point.
It's just from the description of it, Gareth has clearly understood how to create the kind of detailed narrative that I would I love the setting. I love a lot of the characters and just the incidental details. I wouldn't run this game as is because I can't.
Well, maybe the campaign was all that. Yeah,
I would treat it as a source book. I would bring in something else, and that would lose something.
Would you play in the game?
Oh yeah,
James. If you had someone who gets it and who can walk you through your first 5 or 6 rolls until you're like, oh, the penny has dropped.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, by the way, so you know, yes, there were 7 Will and Williams in the names list. So there were only 324 uses of
look at the other column. There's a
conditional
Sean
tense.
McWilliams. I'm sure there's a bunch of them in there. We could fill the rest of the time just going through them.
At the same time, the search doesn't work for apostrophe LL. So there could be just as many.
So, Greg, what class was your character a deep apiarist, the bee person?
No, I went with Cleaver. Because
yeah.
I was going to do Heart Song Cleaver, and I'm like, this sounds like just the best setup. Yes, my goal is to go to the heart and get hearted, and my nature is that I am in the process of being hearted. And the idea of I'm going to eat things to learn appealed to me.
So, James, what was your favorite class in the book?
I liked the deep apiarists. Grant has a thing about bees. He wanted to get bees into our edition of Paranoia as well, and of course Honey Heist. And it's a kind of what is his recurring motifs, but just the idea of being this slightly otherworldly. This creature that is harboring bees within oneself.
Oh yeah,
I think I've done my rant in another episode about the ludonarrative dissonance within BioShock, the first BioShock, the game. It's about the fall of capitalism and libertarianism and the discord between fathers and sons, and meanwhile you're running around firing bees from the palm of your hand like some kind of third-rate DC superhero from the 1960s. But in Heart it really works. It doesn't work for me at all in BioShock, but in this game it works, and just being a character who is consumed by bees in literal and metaphorical ways, really, really love the resonance there. I would buy an entire book of just character classes for Heart. The fact there's only like 9 of them, I felt almost limited it.
Mm-hmm. I know. I love the Junk Mage, being a magic addict and pawing through different styles. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that. I also did both of you look at the monster section, the entities in there? Was there? So I do want to mention my favorite entity in the monster section, which was the Cult of Knives, which is. There is a room where knives that long for blood go. So basically, they're sentient knives that kill enough people. They basically what you encounter is a person who's been stabbed with multiple knives, and they're just walking around undead. But like if they stab you with one of their knives, you could become infected and become another vessel for the Cult of Knives. So the knives are the cultists, and they just use bodies to walk around in to stab other people. And I love that trope. And there's great art of it on page 182. What were your favorite single favorite monsters?
Oh God, the tragic basilisk. And it's like this monster just kills everything it touches, and all it wants is for someone to show it compassion. It just wants a friend and a smile, and its shadow knocks birds out of the sky. And the last line of its description is Delver. The last paragraph: Delvers do not have to attack the creature, although they will want. They will want. Can you put some reverb on that in post? They will want to, as even looking at it fills them. As even looking at fills them with compulsive loathing. Oops. Little typo there. And can instead attempt to make friends with it. This will kill them.
Yeah.
So just tragedy. Yeah.
James, what was your favorite monster?
I think I came around to the signal box cultists for the Vermissian. The first time, because the first mention of the Vermissian, this subterranean railroad, is like page 65. And I was what? And it felt like it didn't fit within the background as I understood it up to that point, because this is one of these games that starts off with mechanics and then you have the character classes, and it's only when you get right to the back of the book that you actually get the world background such as it is. And so these occasional mentions of essentially the underground in terms of a tube system just didn't seem to fit. But the more it's kind of built in is great. And the signal box cultists, who within the bits of the railway that still kind of work, they're cargo cultists, essentially. They almost worship the few remaining bits of the... I really like that, just as a piece of tone.
I definitely use them in the campaign. Yeah.
The wretched galvanic.
And a gorgeous piece of art by them as well.
To bring up an earlier point about talking about how you're supposed to run this sort of on the fly, there's another sort of friction that I encountered when I was running the campaign, in that there is like 80 to 100 pages of material of like different tiers and different locations, different haunts and landmarks and other notable sites, as it should, in order to so you can have a better understanding of how this works. But this is not something you definitely need to read these ahead of time before you run it, so you understand like, how is this place messed up? Well, it's messed up in a really specific and weird way. So read all this material before you run it. So I did take session notes, and I did sort of prepare ahead of time when I was running the campaign, so I could here's how this place is fucked up. It's really messed up. Let me tell you guys, it's this is the god of corpse. The god of corpses. It's a giant corpse that has been they've carved into it to make a settlement, a little town, and like this place is like this, and this place is like this, and so like I couldn't just on the fly make up a memorable location like that, which is no fault of the game. It's just like making a really cool, evocative set piece location takes time and effort, and like it's you can't just effortlessly come up with that on your own. So so you kind of do have to read the material to sort of like run it the way that it's best. Like, you can't improvise it, you can make up new locations obviously, but like I think Heart is best when you use the pre-written stuff, because it's so evocative. Like all those locations, all these monsters
bounce off. It's like sampling.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to sample a Red Saint and make it my own, which gaming has Always does.
Oh, sure. Like, I used an angel, but I lowered its stats to say he was wounded, had been trapped for a while in a Vermisian train station, and so the players didn't have to deal with its full power. But like, yeah, there are all these things you can do, but like, I still based it on these elements. So like, even though it is supposed to be improvised, it helps to have the material ready so you can really spring it on players, because all these locations are great. There's something for everybody in here for messed up places.
It's a lot of very, very, very cool stuff.
Yeah. Even if you don't run the game, there's so many cool ideas in it that you could use.
Deeply stealable. If you like, if you like gory, squicky, weird stuff with cool names.
For Merkborg
yes.
or any number of RPGs.
Oh God,
or you just want an encounter for your, what we used to call in a slightly derisory fashion, your elf game, not meaning Spire here, just, your standard fantasy game. But if you want an encounter that in a couple of years' time, your players will be going, do you remember that thing that was messed up? Then Heart is where you will find that encounter.
It's true. It's very true. It's a not a perfect game, but never claimed to be. But it's a very unique take on the dungeon crawling genre. And even if you don't run it, it's worth getting just to read it and appreciate its art and its incredible ideas. And there's so many, like you said, it's deeply stealable, which I think is the highest praise you can give to an RPG, because we're all little magpies just grabbing stuff from every other game we can imagine to throw in our
We
own
are
pocket.
colonizers. I see that and I like it, so now it's mine.
Yeah.
Here's a question for the two of you knowledgeable gentlemen. Can you think of a game where the very first thing you open the book and the very first thing is an example of play? Because a lot of the games I worked on in the 90s and early 2000s, you'd open the book and, after the verso and a picture and the table of contents, you'd have a short story that would attempt to immerse you in the setting and the tone and show you what, ideally it's like, this is the kind of stuff your character's going to do. And I'm like, okay, what if the cool writing that showed you what the cool stuff your character was going to do was actually an example of play? Has anyone done
the
that?
Japanese?
I'm sure someone has.
Yeah.
I mean, very, very recently, Rosewood Abbey, created by Callum of Les Rollistes, one of our backers and
our boy.
Literally, the first half of the book is that he doesn't call it an example of play. I forget. It's a replay. Basically,
Yes.
I believe it's an actual session that was played through, and it's like the first half of the book, and it's great. You understand not just how bits of the mechanic work and how you set up your characters, but the entire dynamic of a scenario.
Right.
It's wonderful, and it's funny because he had great players for it. So it is.
Well, you know what the one that immediately comes to mind when you say that, James, is De Profundis.
De Profundis, yes.
Where everything is everything. The rules are the flavor text, are the example of play.
The entire book is its
all
own
the borders
example of
have
play.
melted together.
God, I'm so proud of having published that. For those who don't know it,
you should be.
It was originally a Polish game. We published it through Hogshead in, I think, 2001. Could even have been 2002. And it's I think the first epistolatory game in which literally you play by writing letters to another player in the style of Lovecraftian investigators. It is fascinating that you describe the idol that you recovered from the burnt out building, because the same symbol occurred in some of my recent researches. And you go on, building up this kind of conspiracy together until one of you writes, Tonight is that I shall confront them at the sacred grove, and I shall, find their secret, or it will kill me." And then you never write another letter. And but the entire book is a sequence of letters to an unnamed correspondent explaining how you play. And it's great. It's such a good piece of writing. So
strong recommend. I mean, the facile thing would be De Profundis walked so that 1,000-year-old vampire could fly. And it's like, no, De Profundis flew so that 1,000-year-old vampire could also
In a
fly.
different
Yes,
direction.
fly in a different direction. Or the beast, or all the other, journaling and epistolatory games that have come subsequently.
Yeah, the Japanese back in the 80s, through famously their RPG Sword World, would transcribe entire campaigns and rewrite them into a format that was like fiction, but also explaining the game mechanics. So it'd have dialogue and descriptions, and they'd even include art in this. And these replays became very popular in like Japanese gaming magazines and that kind of thing. Recently, a group of fans have translated Sword World into English, including 100-page long replay novels, essentially. You can look that up. I think I put a link on the Ludonarrative Discord, but it's like the anime series Record of the Lotus War started as a Sword World campaign. Or I think it started as a D&D campaign and became Sword World when they couldn't get the rights to republish D&D in Japanese. And so they just made their own RPG and better. And honestly though, I always skip the short stories at the beginning of RPGs. I come back to them later. A lot of people did. Yeah, because I just get to the meat of the game and sort of skim around until I came back to the story. It's Heart is a challenging game because of its concept, and it requires a lot of heavy lifting for people creatively.
It feels to me that I would find this pretty easy.
Sure, you would.
And I think that's the English majorness of it. When I was looking at this, I'm like, okay, after you play through this 5 or 6 times, it's going to start to be samey because you're like, okay, yeah, this is the point. It's like playing through a computer role-playing game because it has the pathing of the plot built into the characters, and they can branch a whole bunch of different ways. But if you're an English major,
you can see the structure,
or a game designer, you will see the seams. On the other hand, if you're a normal person, you could play this a bunch of times and never even notice. And even the Englishiest of English majors can still enjoy it, maybe even enjoy it on a deeper level by going, oh yes, and now I see where we're getting to the third act turn.
This is kind of a growing trend in role-playing games I've seen, not just in this game, but back to season 1, red markets, you save up for retirement, so you know how your character is going to end up, but also recently I played Public Access, which is from Jason Cordova, who did Brindlewood Bay, uses the same system, and that Public Access has a very definitive campaign length where you're like, it's analog horror, and so you're hunting these cursed VHS tapes to find out what happened to a missing TV station, and you're investigating mysteries along the way, and there's only so many tapes, and when you watch them all, that you find out what happens to the TV station, and that's the end of the campaign, and it's very tightly woven in. I think a lot of games now are like, so they don't have written separate campaigns, the game and the campaign are interwoven. And
the walls are breaking down.
Yeah, like in the bottom of Heart, it's all coming together. It's all merging. Story and game is separate as one instead of like separate books.
Plot and mechanics stuck together like a gooey beast from the film From Beyond.
And I think that's a perfect way to end it. Unless you, James, you have any other final thoughts about Heart?
No, going in, I really, really wanted to like this, and I didn't like it quite as much as I thought I was going to. But I would not. It's interesting because when I think about role-playing games, I think about running them. I don't think about being a player, because so little of my life has been as a player rather than as the GM. So I didn't actually think about being a player in a Heart campaign. And if anyone in London is planning to run one, I will take a seat.
Oh, okay. Well, when Garrett's campaign,
there's an offer.
When Garrett's campaign comes out, I may want to run it. So if I run it online, I'll keep you in mind. So
I'm in.
All right. Damn good.
Yeah,
times.
Greg, any final thoughts?
I said my final thought was
Okay, fair enough.
I
thank
used
you all
a
so much for
special
listening.
plummy voice and everything, Ross. God,
You did. I apologize. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you again to all the backers who backed this to make this season possible. We will be doing an adventure next for our next episode. We haven't discussed which one yet, so we'll keep it a surprise. But if you're a high level backer, we'll be opening up the behind the scenes Discord channel soon. And we'll have a link to our Discord channel. We're having really great discussions in there.
we do.
So if you haven't joined the Discord yet and you want to talk about game design, you want to talk about role-playing games, be sure to join because we'll also have links and notifications for our live streams that happen at the end of every month. I think that's about it for this episode.
Well, don't forget the website for
Yes.
the previous 2 seasons worth of episodes.
We got a lot
and
of
links
them.
to our merch page and stuff.
The
Yes.
continuum,
And occasional
the
blog
continuum
updates.
episode is probably our funniest one.
Yeah, it's good times. All right. We'll talk to you all later. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.